Greetings on this divine Tuesday. Here's another episode of Pussy Magic and Musings. I'm Sierra Sullivan. Some people know me as the Pussy Oracle. Woo, woo, woo. I'm so grateful that you're here and tuning in to this broadcast. My original intention of this broadcast was to share some of the really profound stories of magic and pussified evolution that I've been on for the past 3 years since I discovered and was initiated onto my path of being a pussy oracle. Something I never ever thought that I would ever say I was or would be. And at some point I probably will go back and do a series of tales in sequential order. Eventually that'll probably be my book. But, I'm curious to know, what you all want. So for now, I'm just sharing little bits of wisdom as it comes up, because usually there's always a really interesting story every week from my just regular old life. But one of the topics that I'm really feeling into lately, and I talked about it last week, is the topic of pussy shame. And how did we get here as a society? And why is what I'm offering, the services that I offer, so very important? Always, but most importantly, in this time, in this day and age right now. There's an article that I will post here about my take on pussy shame. But today I want to talk to you specifically about where I had pussy shame and how it led me to the service, the work that I'm now offering. And maybe you can relate to my story a little bit as well. So I remember, I have to say, I never felt really ashamed about the way I look down there, about the way that my pussy was designed. But I never really knew that there was a lot of difference in the way pussies are designed. I remember, I think when I was my early 20s, a boyfriend at the time was like, "Oh, you got a great pussy." And I'm like, "Well, what does that even mean? I don't even what's the difference?" And he was like, "Oh, believe me, there's a difference, and I really like yours." And I thought, okay, well, that's really sweet and all, but I didn't really understand what that actually meant, because I hadn't had a lot of exposure to other women's genitals at that point, and wouldn't for many years. But I remember feeling a little disgusted, more than disgusted, when I would look, you'd hear about, you should check yourself out in the mirror and really see what's going on down there. And so every once in a while I would do that. And I was just overarching disgust in just the way that pussy looked. It wasn't even about how my pussy looked. It was just the idea that that's what we had going on down there. And I remember, poking around and looking, and I've got a couple of not birthmarks, but beauty marks on my pussy. And sometimes one of them gets can get a little bit more swollen, and then I'm like, oh my God, is there something going on with me? And I remember even looking even deeper, at my vaginal canal opening, and seeing that I have this, what it seems like is a little extra flap of skin at the beginning, or at the opening. And I just remember feeling really awkward about that. And I'm thinking, is that normal? I mean, again, I didn't know what normal was. So overall, I just felt that, and this is, I think, a pretty prevalent concept or idea that many Western women feel, is that just the whole idea of our genitals are quite ugly, which now I realize that is so not the case. And I'm in awe at the design of our vulvas. But I thought that for a very, very, very long time. I just thought, ugh, why would anybody? I remember the first time when I was, really young in my teenage years and starting to go a little bit deeper in my sexual exploration, and a boyfriend of mine wanted to go down on me, and I thought, this is disgusting. Why would you ever put your mouth down there? I had no concept of what that meant or how amazing it could be back then. And I remember thinking, first of all, gross, it smells. Secondly, you're going to go down there and then you're going to kiss me. And I would literally make him wash his mouth, brush his teeth before he would kiss me. I did not want anything to do with what was down there on his mouth, in my mouth. And I was adamant. And it was like the thing. It was like, all right, you can do that, but I don't want that on my face. I've come a long way because now I love the taste of my own pussy on my husband's mouth. It's just one of the super an aphrodisiac for me, and I've come a long way. But I remember thinking just the idea, I was so disgusted by it. And then as I got older and I would go into women's restrooms and I would just smell the way the women's restroom smells, I now realize it was just more or less not the smell of pussy that I was smelling, but more just the smell of urine and the various proteins that come with urine. But a women's restroom can smell very intense. And I felt disgusted about that and had a lot of shame about that, because I was like, why are we designed in a way that has so much going on? And then when I got my first yeast infection, I remember thinking, oh my God, this is horrific, and itchy and gross. And like, there was just so many points in my life where I was really upset that I had to be a woman. In fact, I think when I was a young girl, probably preteen or tween, maybe even younger, I found out for the first time that eventually I would have to go get a gynecological exam. And the friend of mine that was telling me about that, she was like, oh yeah, and they go and they do this and they do this. And I was appalled. I was so upset. I was like, you're kidding me. I have to go to a doctor and they're going to open me up down there and I have to spread my legs. They're going to open me up and they're going to check me out. And that's part of being a woman. And I have to do that as being a woman. And I was mortified. So if you resonate with anything I'm saying, please, share your story below, because I think that the quickest way to alleviate any sort of shame in our culture and ourselves is to just openly talk about what we feel or what's going on. And then, so those are all the points that I was feeling very shameful and didn't feel good about having it, and certainly did not want to look down there. And I would read about these workshops where women would get out their mirrors and they'd be, looking at each other's pussies. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, that is so gross. It was so gross to me. And of course, now that is a sacred service that I offer, and it's done in such beautiful reverence. And every time a woman comes into what I call my temples and experience it, it is life-changing, totally transformational, awe-inspiring, and women walk away feeling just like alleviated and lifted out of, why don't we do this more often? Why is this so in shame? Why are we not looking? So, I judged a lot of women who have been, thank God I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here, able to be the Pussy Oracle in today's world because of all the amazing women that were sex positive that came before me, and the educated women. And so I'm very grateful, but I just remember thinking that is just never anything that I ever want to do. And then I remember when I had a viral video on the topic of female ejaculations in 2008, and women started asking me if I would teach them. I was like, absolutely not. I do not want to teach anything to do with pussy or sexuality. I had, I was pretty turned off by the idea of many of the teachers and tantrikas out there that I just felt it was gross. And I also saw that there is not a lot of tantric or sexual education schools out there that haven't been tainted by some sort of scandal. So I see that from a sexuality perspective, we've got a long way to go to really be healthy and be able to speak our boundaries and talk about consent. And there's, it's a whole conversation in and of itself. But I wanted nothing to do with that. And the fact that now I'm offering services that are probably very similar to what I was very disgusted by is just a miracle, really, because even though I've been in the women's empowerment field for almost 2 decades, I did not want anything to do with the conversation around pussy. Sexuality, sure, you can't not talk about that when you're empowering women. It just, and I'm pretty open about my sexuality and things like that. But when it came to literally addressing pussy, I was very squeamish, very squeamish. So what turned it around for me, right? What turned it around? Well, for one, I remember taking Mama Gina's School of Womenly Arts. She has a course called Mastery. Thousands and thousands and thousands of women have been through this course, and I signed up for that course maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And one of the first things that we did in the classroom was have a pussy celebration experience. And I don't want to say what it was because we're kind of sworn to secrecy, but there was a pussy celebration experience. And I remember knowing what was going to unfold, I was mortified. I was like, oh God, the room's going to smell. Women are going to take off their pants and have this experience. Like, no way. I'm not doing it. And thank God I had convinced one of my best friends to take the course with me. And she's like, she looks at me, she goes, no, we're doing this. I would have left the room. I literally would have left the room. I was so not in a space to do what was being asked of us. And thank God, go sisterhood. Excuse me, go sisterhood. I went along, and it was actually quite liberating and quite empowering. And the room didn't smell. I mean, you know, I could smell the scent of pussy, but it wasn't gross or didn't disgust me. And it was really playful and fun and elevating. And I started to slowly awaken to what's actually there versus all the ways I'd been conditioned by society to think that it was gross. I mean, the fact that I even use the word gross or disgusting or, you know, all those words were just typical for me. So if you resonate, again, please, you know, post below. What's your story? How do you feel now? Like, I'm very curious. So that started opening me up to a relationship with my pussy. I still didn't really feel the connection that I learned about in that classroom. I didn't really get the power of what Regina was talking about until the summer after I completed the course. I realized, you know what? I don't actually have a good relationship with my pussy, and I'm a visual person, and out of sight, out of mind. So if I'm not in direct connection visually with my pussy, then I don't really have the kind of relationship that I think that I would be able to have. So while I looked in the mirror a bunch, I had never taken a photograph of my pussy. And so that summer, after I completed the course, I was having a beautiful evening with my man. I'm here at the Love Shack on the lake. It's called the Love Shack for a reason. Actually, we've upgraded now, so it's called the Love Chateau because it's a nicer, bigger unit that we have up in the way up in the Thousand Island regions of upstate New York. That's where we're at all summer long, and every summer it's a beautiful time. So we were having one of our epic Saturday nights, and I said, you know what, would you be willing to take a picture of my pussy? Because I've never seen her. I've never actually seen a picture of her. So he did, and I put the phone in front of me, and I remember being like, whoa, that's what she looks like. Now, it's one thing when you look in the mirror to see her in the mirror and kind of poke and prod there. But it's another thing when you actually have a phone that you can see her right here, and you can zoom in and you can really take a look, and you can take her in just as if anybody else was looking. And that was a major catalytic moment for me, because I saw, and I got to see from his eyes, because men have a very different experience of pussy, at least straight men. And he loves my pussy and loves pussy in general. And really I could see through his eyes the beauty of my pussy, as well as actually develop a better relationship for myself. And I remember looking at those pictures for weeks afterwards and just thinking, wow, this is incredible. And I could feel the shame and the disgust and all the ways I had carried a patriarchal conditioning in my system begin to melt away. And I started to get really deeply connected with that part of myself. And from there, I could take all the tools that I had learned in the School of Womenly Arts and begin to apply them more powerfully in my life, because now I had a visual, right? Now I knew what she looked like, what I was dealing with. And I could start to see and be in awe of all of the ways that she had beauty. So that was a huge turning point for me. And then there's many other things I can say about my initiation into becoming a Pussy Oracle. You can certainly, if you've tuned into me at all, there's a lot of podcasts I've been on. There's a Clit show, Clit Talks podcast. There's several podcasts. In fact, I should probably make a list of the podcasts that I've been on in this collective, Pussy Collective Facebook group. But But that's a story for another time. And if you want to hear it, just post below. Hey, and I don't know your story, and I'd love to hear it, and I'm happy to share it. But I started with that opening, things started opening for me, both on my own personal level with my connection to pussy, as well as my calling in the world and the next level of my contribution to this conversation and to the world's and the women of the world's transformation. So just thought I'd share this with you because I've had my shame. My shame took a different form later on. And actually next week, if you tune in next week, every Tuesday at 2:22 Pacific time, I do these Facebook Lives. So if you want to tune in next week, I'm going to talk about a moment that I had 2 years after becoming a Pussy Oracle and doing this sacred work, where I also experienced a deep, dark pussy shame moment that was totally catalyzed by my Oracle self. And I never expected it. It was a slap in the face randomly. And it's a really good, powerful story that I actually haven't shared publicly anywhere yet. So if you're curious, tune in next week and I will share that story. And please do post below and let me know what resonated for you. Maybe open up to some of your pussy shame, if there's still shame, maybe some of your past shame. You know, let's have an open dialogue about this. It's really important that we as women shine a light and love each other and hold each other through some of the places that we're still caught in shadow and negativity around one of the most profound, majestic, and magical parts of our bodies and our beings. So I'd love to hear more. And again, I'm Sierra Sullivan. This is Pussy, Magic, and Musings. And tune in next week, 2:22 p.m. Pacific, every Tuesday, right here in the Pussy Collective. Thanks so much for tuning in. Lots of love. Ciao.